Alright, Geordie Prepper here, welcome to another Prepper News video. First article we're looking at is questioning whether London will be safe if World War III breaks out. It's saying that it needs to be urgently adapted for war. You know, in lots of other countries who have basically had more exposure to war, they're obviously extremely ready. They have bunkers, they have civilian shelters, and London doesn't have any of that. You know, it came under a lot of attack during the Second World War from German bombings, and you famously see people sheltering in the underground. But obviously from this picture here, it has its problems. They're basically filled with debris, and some of the stations are next to important waterworks. And it's saying, you know, like one of the stations during the Second World War filled with water, so they're not suitable for taking shelter in the London Underground. It's simply not constructed in a way to act as a shelter in any sort of way. It's constructed to be a transport system, and it's not designed to withstand an attack. This gentleman here is basically putting it very, very plainly. If you're in a tube station and hit directly, let's face it, you are F-word. I wouldn't suggest going to the underground. But they were saying, you know, the Anderson shelters offered the best protection, and I've read a bit about this before. The Anderson shelters were extremely good, and they saved a lot of lives. So if you do have the space and you can, I would build yourself an Anderson shelter, if anything. That's probably going to be cheapest. It doesn't take up much room and will give you a lot of protection. On to the next article now, guys, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. Do not talk to mainstream media. They just simply abhor preppers. They absolutely love making fun of you in their article. Call this guy a doomsday prepper. That's basically a derogatory term for a prepper. They just think that we're preparing for the end of the world and that we're crazy. They just poke fun out of you in their articles and in their description of things. Like here's an image, perfect example, an image of some books. Every prepper's got books like this. The caption underneath the image is, some of the books have eerie titles. They just choose any way they can to pick fun of preppers. They have absolutely no regard or any respect for preppers at all. So if you're a prepper, this gentleman has a prepper store apparently. So you have a business in the prepping field. You know, at times like this, you're probably going to be approached to do an article. They'll probably say, oh, we're going to put you in the best light possible. It's just basically to get your perspective on current events, you know. It gives the reasons here why, you know, people are nervous. Doomsday clock, 90 seconds, nuclear war threat is highest level ever. North Korea, etc., right? If you're a prepper, if you're in the business of prepping, if you're in the business of providing things that preppers buy, do not talk to the mainstream media at all. Moving on to Middle East and Gaza now. So we saw this type of situation in Afghanistan, where the United States forces and other forces move the Taliban out of a certain area. They would move on, call it a success, and then as soon as the US and other forces left that area, the Taliban would just move back in again. A lot of the things that happen there are basically happening here. So external third party is invading an area. They push the majority of the civilian population right down to the south now. But Hamas are resurging in the north. Israeli defense forces are coming under increasing fire from militants reappearing in Gaza City. So whether this was a ploy by Hamas, it could have been. They basically would have naturally encircled the Israeli forces. If the Israeli forces are moving en masse further south, they would leave like less people up around the north. So it seems that Hamas is basically waited at this point, and now they're re-attacking them up in the north in Gaza City. So there was a huge funding package that was stalled. The new package, which is the first of 2024. It was just first discussed towards the end of last year, though. And there was a financial package towards the end of 2023, which was released, which was the last package of the year. We spoke about this in a previous video, but now it seems that $118 billion has been released. It was tied to the southern border issues in the United States. It helps with wartime aid for Ukraine, Israel, and other allies. So posing the question whether the US and Iran are inching toward war, I would say, yeah. I mean, if they don't go to war at this point, or if there isn't some sort of... they won't call it war, obviously, unless Iran declares war on the United States. They won't call it war, they'll just call it retribution for the personnel that the United States lost. But unless something really definitive happens and Iran basically proves that they've got no ties to these groups, I think US and Iran are basically going to be in this perpetual conflict for now. And time again, people commenting on these personnel that were lost, they were saying, well, why were they even there? That question's coming up more and more now, and it's being asked to the United States, why are these people exposed to the risk that they're at in these military bases that seemingly have absolutely no reason to be there, a mission that really just doesn't exist. So obviously both sides are spying on each other. Iran just recently launched some satellites which are suspected to give them much better oversight of the area and capability to launch and direct missiles to targets. So both sides are going to be probing each other's weak points. America's obviously probing Iran's weak points right now, really. In a diplomatic way, maybe not so much as a physical, kinetic way for now. If the attacks actually go onto Iranian soil, then they're going to be probing the Iranian defences. Seems the United States and its allies are going after the Houthis right now, which was definitely not unexpected. They started off doing attacks in Iraq and Syria, and it was only a matter of time before they went after the Houthis. They're obviously, the United States is seeing how far it can get away with these attacks and what the response is to it. So related to these strikes in Yemen, the United States targeted 5 missile sites armed with missiles for land and sea attacks. And this came after an increased wave of United States and other forces doing attacks in Iraq and Syria. Now they've got their eye focused on Yemen. And it seems that the Houthis are extending the scope of their interest. The Houthis have basically garnered international attention, but it's also increasing their credibility and their legitimacy in Yemen as well. The Houthis aren't in total control of Yemen. So these attacks on United States and other countries' ships, they're basically becoming somewhat of an icon or an idol that people in the country are saying, oh, well, this is the strength that we're looking for, I think we could see it's possible that basically the Houthis install themselves into the leadership of the entire country, or the people simply ask for the Houthis to lead them. Obviously the West wouldn't like that because the PLC is basically a committee, a council which is in constant talks with the West and is basically very West allied. So it is the biggest counterweight to the Houthis in Yemen. Its job was to engage with the Houthis and just to lower tensions in that region. That's the end of today's Prepper News. Thanks very much for watching. Be safe, be prepared, and I'll see you in the next broadcast. This has been Geordie Prepper, signing out.